The box arrived on a Tuesday, unassuming in its plain brown wrapping, addressed to their son, Eli. Sarah stared at it on the kitchen counter, her heart pounding like it hadn't since the hospital room went silent 3 years ago. She hadn't heard from her late wife's family since the funeral, and now this. Her fingers trembled as she traced the return address. Clara's parents. Sarah's wife, Clara, had been the sun in their small universe, her laughter filling their modest Oregon home with warmth. Her death had left Sarah and their adopted son, Eli, now 6, navigating a world that felt too big, too cold. The box wasn't just a delivery, it was a crack in the fragile wall Sarah had built around her grief. She called Mia, her partner of the last year, who was across town at her bookstore. "It's from them," Sarah said, voice low, as if speaking louder might summon ghosts. Mia, with her steady calm, promised to be home in 20 minutes. Sarah sat, staring at the box, the weight of Clara's absence pressing against her chest. Mia arrived, her blonde hair catching the late afternoon light as she stepped through the door. At 38, Mia was a quiet force, her presence grounding Sarah in ways she hadn't thought possible after Clara. She crossed the room, her boots soft on the hardwood, and knelt beside Sarah. "You don't have to open it alone," Mia said, her hand resting on Sarah's knee. Sarah nodded, her throat tight. Together, they peeled back the tape, revealing a small, pale blue dress folded neatly inside. Embroidered on the chest, in delicate gold thread, was the name Clara. A note slipped out, written in Clara's mother's careful script, for Eli, to remember her. Sarah's breath caught. Eli was their son, yes, but a boy, why a dress? And why Clara's name? The question hung between them, heavy and unanswered. Mia's fingers brushed Sarah's, a silent promise of support, but her eyes flickered with unease. Clara's family had never accepted Sarah, not fully. They tolerated her during Clara's life, but after the accident, they'd cut contact, blaming her for reasons they never voiced. This gift felt like a message, but its meaning was a puzzle wrapped in pain. Sarah thought of Eli, at school now, oblivious to the storm this box would bring. He was 6, with Clara's bright eyes and a heart that still asked for his Mama Clara at night. Sarah had fought to keep his world steady, to shield him from the loss that had shattered her own. But this dress, this name, it was a ripple threatening to become a wave. Mia stood, pulling Sarah into her arms. "We'll figure it out," she whispered, her voice a lifeline. Sarah leaned into her, the familiar scent of Mia's lavender shampoo grounding her. But as they held each other, the dress lay on the table, its delicate fabric a stark reminder of the past they couldn't escape. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She slipped out of bed, leaving Mia's warmth, and sat in the living room, the dress in her hands. She remembered Clara sewing late at night, her fingers deft as she crafted tiny clothes for Eli's stuffed animals. Had Clara ever mentioned a dress? Sarah's mind raced, piecing together fragments of memory. Clara's family was conservative, rooted in traditions Sarah had never fully understood. The dress felt like a statement, but was it love or judgment? The next morning, Eli bounded into the kitchen, his backpack bouncing. "What's that?" he asked, spotting the dress on the counter. Sarah froze, her heart lurching. Mia, pouring coffee, stepped in smoothly. "Just a gift, buddy," she said, ruffling his hair. "We're still figuring it out." Eli shrugged, more interested in his cereal, but Sarah caught the curiosity in his eyes. She drove him to school, the dress haunting her thoughts. At a red light, she texted Clara's sister, Emily, the only family member who'd ever shown her kindness. "Why the dress? Why Clara's name?" The reply came hours later, curt and cryptic. "Mom thought it was right. Ask her." Sarah's stomach twisted. Clara's mother, Helen, had always been the coldest, her disapproval a silent blade. Back home, Mia was at the table, the note in her hands. "This doesn't feel like a gift for Eli," she said, her voice low. "It feels like it's for you." Sarah's eyes widened. The idea hadn't occurred to her, but now it burrowed deep. Was this Helen's way of reopening old wounds? Or was there something else, something Clara had left behind? They decided to wait before showing Eli. Sarah tucked the dress into a drawer, but its presence lingered, a quiet challenge to the life they'd built. Mia suggested they call Helen, but Sarah hesitated. The last time they'd spoken, Helen had called Sarah unnatural, her voice dripping with disdain. The memory stung, but the dress demanded answers. That evening, as Mia read to Eli, Sarah sat alone, her phone in hand. She typed out a message to Helen, then deleted it. Typed again. We got the package. Why the dress? She hit send before she could overthink it. The reply came faster than she expected. Come to Boise. We need to talk. Sarah's heart sank. Boise was Clara's hometown, a place Sarah had avoided since the funeral. It was a 6-hour drive, a journey into a past she'd buried. But the dress, the note, the name, they were threads pulling her back. She looked at Mia, laughing with Eli over a picture book, and felt a surge of love mixed with fear. Whatever this gift meant, it was about to change everything. Sarah stared at the text from Helen, the words glowing starkly on her phone screen. Come to Boise. The invitation felt less like a request and more like a summons, pulling her toward a confrontation she'd spent 3 years avoiding. She showed Mia, whose brow furrowed as she read it. It's a trap, Mia said, setting her wine glass down with a soft clink. They were in the kitchen, the house quiet with Eli asleep upstairs. You don't owe them anything, Sarah. Not after how they treated you. Sarah nodded, but her mind was already racing toward Boise. Clara's family had always been a shadow in their marriage, their disapproval a constant hum beneath Clara's warmth. The dress was a puzzle piece, and Helen held the rest. I need to know why, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. For Eli. For me. Mia sighed, her hand finding Sarah's across the table. Then we go together, she said firmly. You're not facing them alone. Sarah squeezed her hand, gratitude mixing with the dread pooling in her chest. Mia was her anchor, but even she couldn't shield Sarah from the ghosts waiting in Boise. They planned the trip for the weekend, telling Eli they were visiting family friends. He was too young to remember Clara's parents, but his questions about Mama Clara had grown sharper lately. Sarah packed the dress in her bag, its soft fabric a weight she couldn't shake. The drive to Boise was long, the Oregon landscape giving way to Idaho's rolling hills. Mia drove, her playlist of soft indie folk filling the silence. Eli napped in the back seat, his stuffed dinosaur clutched tight. Sarah stared out the window, memories of Clara flooding back, her laugh, her habit of singing off-key to the radio, the way she'd planned every detail of Eli's adoption. When they arrived at Helen's house, a tidy ranch-style home with a manicured lawn, Sarah's stomach knotted. Helen answered the door, her face a mask of polite reserve. At 65, she looked older than Sarah remembered, her gray hair pulled back tightly, her eyes sharp. Sarah, she said, her voice clipped. And Mia, was it? Mia nodded, her arm brushing Sarah's in quiet support. They followed Helen inside, where Clara's father, George, sat in an armchair, his expression unreadable. Eli clung to Sarah's leg, sensing the tension. Helen offered him a cookie, and he scampered off to the living room, leaving the adults in a strained silence. Why the dress? Sarah asked, cutting through the pleasantries. She pulled it from her bag, holding it up like evidence. Helen's eyes flickered, but she didn't answer immediately. Instead, she gestured to a photo album on the coffee table. You should see this first, she said. Sarah hesitated, then opened the album. Inside were photos of Clara as a child, gap-toothed smiles, pigtails, and a familiar blue dress. Sarah's breath hitched. The dress in her hands was a replica, down to the gold embroidery of Clara's name. She wore this when she was Eli's age, Helen said, her voice softening for the first time. She loved it. Said it made her feel like a princess. Sarah's eyes stung. She could picture Clara, all energy and light, twirling in that dress. But the question remained. Why send it to Eli, she asked. He's a boy. And you've ignored us for years. Helen's face tightened. We didn't know how to reach you, she said, but the words felt hollow. George shifted in his chair, his voice gruff. It wasn't about ignoring you. It was about Clara. We lost her too. The room felt smaller, the air thick with unspoken blame. Mia's hand found Sarah's under the table, a steadying force. You could have called, Sarah said, her voice breaking. You could have been there for Eli. Helen looked away, her hands clasped tightly. We made mistakes, she admitted. But that dress, it's all we have left of her. We thought Eli should have it, to know her. Sarah wanted to scream, to demand why they'd chosen this way to reach out, why they'd let years pass in silence. But Eli's laughter from the next room stopped her. She glanced at Mia, who gave her a small nod, as if to say, keep going. Eli doesn't need a dress to remember Clara, Sarah said, her voice steadier now. He needs family. Why now? What changed? Helen's eyes met hers, and for the first time, Sarah saw a flicker of vulnerability. Emily found something, she said. Clara's journal. She wrote about you, about Eli, about the dress. Sarah's heart stopped. Clara's journal? She'd never known Clara kept one. The idea of her wife's words, preserved and waiting, felt like a lifeline and a wound all at once. Helen slid a small, leather-bound book across the table. Read it, she said. Then you'll understand. Sarah's hands trembled as she took the journal, its weight heavier than the dress. She didn't open it, not yet. She wasn't ready to face Clara's voice, not in front of Helen and George. Mia squeezed her hand again, her eyes saying everything words couldn't. As they left, Eli hugged Helen shyly, and she ruffled his hair, a ghost of a smile on her face. Back in the car, Sarah clutched the journal, the dress folded beside her. The drive home was quiet, the weight of Clara's words looming larger with every mile. Back in Oregon, the journal sat unopened on Sarah's nightstand for 2 days. Its presence was a quiet pulse in the house, pulling her attention every time she passed. Mia didn't push, but Sarah felt her watching, her concern a soft weight in their shared silences. On the third night, with Eli asleep and the house dark, Sarah finally reached for it. She sat on the couch, a single lamp casting a warm glow, and opened the cover. Clara's handwriting, bold, looping, unmistakably hers, filled the pages. Sarah's chest tightened as she read the first line. If you're reading this, I'm probably gone, and Sarah, I'm so sorry. Tears blurred her vision, but she kept reading. Clara's words spilled out, her love for Sarah, her dreams for Eli, her fears of leaving them too soon. The journal chronicled their life together, from their first date at a Portland coffee shop to the day they brought Eli home. But one entry, dated a month before the accident, stopped Sarah cold. I found the dress in Mom's attic, Clara wrote. The one I wore as a kid. I want Eli to have it, not to wear but to know who I was. I want him to know I was a girl who dreamed big, who loved fiercely. Sarah, if I'm not there, show him. Please. Sarah's sob broke the silence. Mia, hearing it from the bedroom, rushed in, kneeling beside her. What is it? She asked, her voice soft but urgent. Sarah handed her the journal, unable to speak. Mia read, her eyes widening, then softening. She wanted this, Mia whispered. She wanted Eli to have a piece of her. Sarah nodded, but the weight of Clara's words was crushing. The dress wasn't just a gift, it was Clara's voice, reaching across time. But why had Helen sent it now? And why the silence for so long? The journal held no answers, only Clara's love, raw and unfiltered. The next morning, Sarah showed Eli the dress, careful to keep her voice steady. This was Mama Clara's when she was little, she said, kneeling beside him. Eli touched the embroidery, his small fingers tracing Clara. Why'd she give it to me? He asked, his brow furrowed. Sarah hesitated, then said, "She wanted you to remember how much she loved you." Eli nodded, accepting it with the simplicity of a child, but Sarah saw the questions in his eyes. She hugged him tightly, wishing she could shield him from the confusion she felt. Mia suggested they frame the dress, a way to honor Clara without forcing it into Eli's world in a way he didn't understand. Sarah agreed, but the journal nagged at her. There were pages she hadn't read, entries about Clara's family, her struggles with their expectations. One passage stood out. "Mom thinks I'm betraying her by living my truth with Sarah. I wish she could see how happy I am." Sarah's anger flared. Helen had known about Clara's love, her dreams, and still shut Sarah out. The dress felt like a peace offering, but it came too late, tainted by years of rejection. She wanted to call Helen, to demand answers, but Mia urged her to wait. "You're still processing," Mia said, her hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Give it time." But time felt like a luxury Sarah didn't have. Eli was growing, asking more about Clara, and the dress had stirred something in him. At school, he told his teacher about Mama Clara's dress, and Sarah got a call from the counselor, concerned about his confusion. Sarah's jaw tightened as she explained it wasn't confusion. It was love, complicated and real. That night, she and Mia sat down with Eli, showing him photos from the album Helen had given them. Eli giggled at young Clara in pigtails, but his questions grew sharper. "Why don't Grandma and Grandpa visit?" he asked. Sarah faltered, but Mia stepped in. "They live far away, buddy," she said, "but they love you." Sarah shot her a grateful look, but the lie stung. Later, alone, Sarah returned to the journal. Clara's final entries were frantic, written in the weeks before the accident.
"I'm scared, Sarah.
Not of dying, but of leaving you and Eli. Promise me you'll keep loving, even if it's not me." Sarah's tears fell onto the page, smudging the ink. She hadn't realized how much she'd been holding back, afraid to fully let Mia in, afraid it would betray Clara. Mia found her there, curled on the couch, the journal open. Without a word, she wrapped Sarah in her arms, holding her through the sobs. "You're not betraying her," Mia whispered. "She wanted you to live." Sarah clung to her, the truth of those words both a comfort and a challenge. The dress, the journal, Helen's cryptic invitation, they were pieces of a puzzle Sarah wasn't sure she could solve. But for Eli, for Clara, she had to try. Sarah woke to the sound of Eli's laughter, a rare lightness that pulled her from the heaviness of the journal. Downstairs, Mia was making pancakes. Eli perched on a stool, helping by sprinkling chocolate chips. Sarah watched them, her heart caught between love for this moment and the ache of Clara's absence. She hadn't told Mia about Clara's last words yet. "Promise me you'll keep loving." They echoed in her mind as she joined them, kissing Eli's forehead and squeezing Mia's hand. But the journal's weight lingered, and Sarah knew she couldn't keep avoiding Helen. The dress was a bridge, however fragile, and she needed answers. She called Helen that afternoon, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I read the journal," she said. "Why didn't you tell me about it sooner?" Helen's silence was long, then she said, "We didn't know how to face you. Clara's death, it broke us too." Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. "You blamed me," she said, the words spilling out. "You cut us off. Eli needed you." Helen's voice cracked. "I know. I was wrong. The dress was my way of trying to fix it. It wasn't enough, but it was a start." Helen asked them to visit again, to talk in person. Sarah hesitated, glancing at Mia, who nodded encouragingly. "Okay," Sarah said. "But this time, it's for Eli." They drove back to Boise the next weekend, the journal and dress in Sarah's bag like talismans. Eli was quieter this time, sensing the weight of the trip. When they arrived, Helen greeted them with a warmth Sarah hadn't expected, offering Eli a puzzle to play with. George was softer too, asking Eli about school, his eyes crinkling with a smile Sarah hadn't seen in years. In the kitchen, Helen handed Sarah a box of Clara's things, letters, trinkets, a necklace Sarah had given her on their first anniversary. "She kept everything," Helen said, her voice thick. "She loved you so much." Sarah's throat closed, but she managed a nod, clutching the box. They talked for hours, peeling back layers of grief and misunderstanding. Helen admitted her struggle with Clara's identity, her fear of losing her daughter to a life she didn't understand. "I see now how wrong I was," she said, tears in her eyes. "I want to be in Eli's life." Sarah wanted to believe her, but trust was a fragile thing. She thought of Clara's journal, her plea for Sarah to keep living, to keep loving. Could that include forgiving Helen? She wasn't sure, but for Eli, she'd try. Back home, Sarah and Mia framed the dress, hanging it in Eli's room beside a photo of Clara. He touched it sometimes, asking questions about his mama Clara, and Sarah answered with stories, keeping her alive in his heart. But the journal's final pages still called to Sarah, unopened, waiting. One night, she read the last entry. Clara had written about a dream, a family reunion, not just with her parents, but with Sarah, Eli, and someone new, someone who'd love them as fiercely as she had. "I want you to find her, Sarah. I want you to be whole." Sarah wept, but this time, the tears felt different, less like loss, more like release. She looked at Mia, asleep beside her, and realized Clara had seen this future, had wanted it for her. The dress, the journal, Helen's outreach, they were Clara's way of pushing Sarah forward, even from beyond. Eli's questions about the dress grew less frequent, but his connection to Clara deepened through Sarah's stories. Helen started calling, sending small gifts for Eli, a book, a toy car. Sarah let her in, cautiously, building a bridge for Eli's sake. Mia, ever steady, helped Sarah navigate the balance. One evening, as they watched Eli play in the backyard, Mia said, "You're doing it, you know." What Clara wanted. Sarah leaned into her, feeling the truth of it. The dress had been a spark, igniting a journey toward healing, toward a family redefined. But Sarah knew the journey wasn't over. Clara's words, Helen's regret, Eli's growing curiosity, they were threads in a tapestry still being woven. And somewhere in Boise, another piece of the puzzle waited, one Sarah wasn't sure she was ready to face. The days after Boise felt lighter, as if Clara's journal had lifted a veil from Sarah's heart. She and Mia fell into a rhythm, balancing Eli's school routines with quiet evenings of board games and laughter. But the box of Clara's things, still unopened on the dining table, was a reminder that some doors remained closed. Sarah caught Eli staring at it one morning, his small hands hovering over the lid. "Is that Mama Clara's too?" he asked. Sarah nodded, kneeling beside him. "Want to look together?" she asked, her voice soft. Eli's eyes lit up, and Mia joined them, her presence a steady warmth. Inside were fragments of Clara's life, a locket with a photo of Sarah and Eli, ticket stubs from their first concert, a sketchbook filled with Clara's doodles. Eli giggled at a drawing of a lopsided dinosaur, declaring it just like mine. Sarah's heart swelled, seeing Clara through his eyes. But one item stopped her, a letter, addressed to Sarah in Clara's handwriting, sealed with wax. Her hands shook as she held it. Mia's eyes met hers, a silent question. "Later," Sarah whispered, tucking it into her pocket. She wasn't ready, not in front of Eli. That night, with Eli asleep, Sarah sat on the porch, the letter in her hands. Mia brought her a mug of tea, sitting close. "You don't have to read it now," she said, but Sarah shook her head. "I need to know," she said, breaking the seal. Clara's words were a flood. "Sarah, my love, if you're reading this, I'm gone, but I'm still with you. I wrote this after we got Eli, knowing I might not have forever. You're the strongest person I know, but I'm scared you'll stop living without me. Don't. Find love again for you, for Eli. I'll always be your first, but I won't be your last." Sarah's tears fell, blurring the ink. Mia pulled her close, her own eyes glistening. She knew, Mia said softly. She wanted this, us. Sarah nodded, the letter a final gift, a blessing from Clara to let go of guilt and embrace Mia fully. The next day, Sarah called Helen, her voice steadier than before. We found a letter, she said. Clara wanted us to move forward. I want you in Eli's life, but it has to be real. Helen's voice was thick with emotion. I'm trying, Sarah. I want to make it right. They agreed to meet again, this time in Oregon. Helen and George arrived a week later, bringing a photo album for Eli, filled with pictures of Clara's childhood. Eli pored over it, asking about Grandma and Grandpa's house. Sarah watched, her heart caught between hope and caution. Helen pulled her aside, her eyes softer than Sarah had ever seen. I kept something else, she said, handing Sarah a small velvet pouch. Inside was a ring, Clara's, the one she'd worn before their wedding band. She wanted you to have it, for when you were ready. Sarah's breath caught. The ring was simple, a silver band with a tiny sapphire, a piece of Clara she'd thought lost. She slipped it onto her right hand, feeling its weight, its promise. Thank you, she said, her voice breaking. Helen nodded, a tear escaping. Mia watched from across the room, her smile bittersweet. Later, as they cleaned up after dinner, she took Sarah's hand, touching the ring. It suits you, she said. Sarah leaned into her, whispering, You suit me. Eli's bond with Helen and George grew, small steps toward a family Sarah hadn't dared imagine. But the letter lingered in her mind, Clara's words urging her to live fully. She and Mia started planning a future, maybe a bigger house, a trip with Eli. The dress, now framed, hung as a quiet reminder of Clara's love, not a wound but a bridge. Yet Sarah sensed something unresolved. Helen's gift of the ring felt final, but Clara's journal hinted at one more secret, a mention of the box in the attic. Sarah hadn't found it in the things Helen sent. Was it still in Boise? The question gnawed at her, a thread she couldn't let go. As she tucked Eli into bed, he asked, Did Mama Clara know Grandma would send the dress? Sarah smiled, brushing his hair back. I think she did, buddy. But in her heart, she wondered what else Clara had left for them to find. Sarah couldn't shake the journal's mention of the box in the attic. It felt like Clara's final whisper, a piece of her still waiting to be uncovered. She called Helen, her voice tentative. Clara wrote about a box in your attic. Do you know what she meant? Helen paused, then said, I'll look. There's a lot up there we haven't touched since her voice trailed off. Come back next weekend. Bring Eli and Mia. Sarah agreed, though the idea of another trip to Boise stirred unease. Mia, sensing it, squeezed her hand. We'll face it together, she said. The week passed slowly, Sarah's mind tangled with possibilities. Was it more letters? Photos? Something for Eli? She and Mia kept busy, taking Eli to the park, where he ran through fallen leaves, his laughter a balm. But at night, Sarah's dreams were filled with Clara's voice, urging her to keep searching. In Boise, Helen led them to the attic, a dusty space crammed with boxes and old furniture. Eli stayed downstairs with George, playing checkers. Sarah and Mia sifted through decades of memories, yearbooks, Christmas ornaments, Clara's childhood art. Then Helen pulled a small wooden box from a corner, its lid carved with flowers. This was hers, she said, her voice soft. Sarah's heart raced as she opened it. Inside were letters, dozens of them, tied with a red ribbon. They were addressed to Eli, written in Clara's hand, each marked with a year, to Eli at 5, to Eli at 10, to Eli at 18. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Clara had planned for a future she wouldn't see, leaving words for her son. Mia read one over Sarah's shoulder, her voice catching. Eli, my heart, you're 6 now. I bet you're so brave. Mama Sarah is your rock, and I know she's loving you for both of us. Sarah clutched the letters, overwhelmed. Clara had known she might not be there, had poured her love into these pages for Eli. Helen watched, her face etched with regret. I found these after the dress, she said. I should have sent them sooner. Sarah nodded, too choked to speak. The letters were a gift, but they also reopened the wound of Clara's foresight, her quiet preparation for death. Back home, Sarah and Mia read the letters slowly, one each night. They were filled with Clara's humor, her dreams for Eli, her love for Sarah. One letter, for Eli at 16, mentioned Mia by description, not name. I hope Sarah's found someone who makes her laugh again. Love her for me, Eli. Sarah looked at Mia, tears streaming. She saw you, she whispered. Mia smiled, brushing Sarah's cheek. She saw us. They decided to save the letters for Eli's future, reading them to him as he grew, a way to keep Clara's voice alive. The dress, the journal, now the letters, they were Clara's legacy, woven into their lives. Helen's visits became more frequent, her effort to rebuild genuine. She brought George, who taught Eli how to whittle, his gruff exterior softening with every smile. Sarah watched, her heart thawing. Forgiveness was hard, but Clara's words made it possible. One evening, Sarah and Mia sat with Eli, reading a letter for his 7th birthday. You're growing so fast, my love. Be kind, be brave, and know I'm always with you. Eli hugged them both, his small arms tight. Mama Clara's like a star, right? Watching us. Sarah nodded, her throat tight. Exactly, buddy. The box in the attic had been the last piece, or so Sarah thought. But as they settled into this new normal, a call from Emily, Clara's sister, changed everything. There's one more thing, Emily said, her voice hesitant. Clara left a video. It's for you and Eli. I'll send it. Sarah's breath caught. A video? Clara's face, her voice, preserved beyond the pages of a journal. It felt like a miracle and a heartbreak. She told Mia, who held her close. Whatever it is, Mia said, we'll watch it together. As they waited for the video, Sarah felt Clara's presence stronger than ever. The dress had started this journey, the journal and letters had deepened it, and now a video loomed, promising one final piece of Clara's heart. Sarah wasn't sure she was ready, but with Mia and Eli by her side, she knew she could face it. The email from Emily arrived late on a Friday, a video file attached with the subject, Clara's message. Sarah stared at it, her cursor hovering over the download button. Mia, sensing her hesitation, suggested they wait until Eli was asleep. We'll watch it together, she said, her voice a steady anchor. That night, with the house quiet, Sarah and Mia sat on the couch, the laptop between them. Sarah's hands shook as she clicked play. Clara's face filled the screen, her smile as radiant as Sarah remembered, her chestnut hair tucked behind her ears. Hi, my loves, Clara said, her voice clear, breaking Sarah's heart anew. The video was short, filmed in their old bedroom, sunlight streaming through the window. Clara spoke to Eli first, her eyes bright. My sweet boy, you're probably so big now. I love you more than all the stars. Be kind, be you, and let Mama Sarah guide you. Sarah's tears fell silently, her hand gripping Mia's. Then Clara turned to Sarah. Babe, you're my forever. I know you're hurting, but you're so strong. I left the dress, the letters, this video. I wanted you to have pieces of me. Find love again, Sarah. Live for both of us. She paused, her eyes softening. Whoever's with you now, thank them for me. They're part of our family. The screen went black, and Sarah sobbed, Mia's arms around her. Clara had seen Mia, had blessed their future. It was a gift beyond measure, a final release from the guilt Sarah hadn't named. Mia whispered, she's still here in us. They watched it again the next morning with Eli, who climbed into Sarah's lap, eyes wide. That's Mama Clara, he said, touching the screen. When Clara spoke to him, he smiled, then hugged Sarah tight. She's happy we're happy, he said, his child's logic cutting through the grief. Sarah called Helen, her voice thick with gratitude. The video, thank you for keeping it. Helen's reply was soft. Emily found it in Clara's old laptop. We wanted you to have everything. For the first time, Sarah felt a real bridge to Clara's family, built on shared love for her. The video changed things. Sarah felt lighter, as if Clara's words had lifted a weight she'd carried too long. She and Mia started talking about the future, maybe a commitment ceremony, a way to honor their love while carrying Clara's blessing. Eli, ever perceptive, asked if Mia was his other mom now. Mia laughed, kissing his forehead. I'm your Mia, always. Helen and George visited more, bringing stories of Clara that Eli soaked up. Sarah watched them bond, her heart warming. The dress, still framed in Eli's room, became a touchstone, not of loss but of connection. The letters waited in a safe place, ready for Eli's milestones. One evening, Sarah found Mia in the backyard, staring at the stars. What's on your mind? Sarah asked, slipping her arm around her. Mia smiled, a little shy. I was thinking about Clara, how she made this possible. She turned to Sarah, her eyes serious. I want to marry you, Sarah. Not to replace her, but to build on what she gave us. Sarah's breath caught, Clara's words echoing. Live for both of us. She pulled Mia close, whispering, yes. The moment felt sacred, a promise woven from past and present. They told Eli the next day, and he cheered, asking if he could carry the rings. But as they planned, Emily called again. There's one last thing, she said, her voice hesitant. Clara left a trust for Eli. It's small, but she wanted it for his future. Sarah's heart sank, not from the news, but from the realization that Clara had planned so much, knowing she might not be there. The trust was another piece of Clara's love, a final gift to secure Eli's dreams. Sarah and Mia sat with it, overwhelmed by Clara's foresight. The dress, the journal, the letters, the video. Now they were Clara's way of staying with them, guiding them forward. Sarah looked at Mia, at Eli playing nearby, and felt a quiet peace. The journey wasn't over, but Clara's gifts had built a foundation for their future. One last question lingered. What else had Clara left, and would they ever find it all? The trust papers arrived a week later, a slim envelope detailing Clara's wishes for Eli's future, college, travel, a life of possibilities. Sarah read them with Mia, her heart full of gratitude and awe at Clara's love. The dress, the journal, the letters, the video. Now they were threads in a tapestry Clara had woven, binding them together even in her absence. Sarah and Mia decided to celebrate, not just the trust, but their family. They planned a small ceremony in their backyard, a commitment to each other and to Eli. Helen and George came, along with Emily, who brought a photo of Clara to place on the table, her smile watching over them. Eli, now 7, carried a tiny box with 2 simple bands, his grin wide as he handed them to Sarah and Mia. Under a canopy of string lights, Sarah took Mia's hands, her voice steady despite the tears. You're my home, she said. Clara gave me permission to love again, and I choose you. Mia's eyes shone as she replied, I'm here for you, for Eli, for all of it. They slipped the rings on, Eli cheering, and Helen wiped a tear, her face soft with acceptance. After, they danced, Eli twirling between them, Helen and George swaying awkwardly, Emily laughing as she filmed. The dress, still framed in Eli's room, felt like Clara's presence, a quiet blessing. Sarah caught Helen's eye, and for the first time, they shared a nod of understanding, a bridge built over years of pain. The trust was a practical gift, but its true weight was emotional. Sarah and Mia set it aside for Eli's future, letting him dream without pressure. They read him another letter from Clara, this one for his 8th birthday, where she wrote, Be curious, my love. The world is big, and you're brave enough for it. Eli hugged them, asking if he could be an astronaut like Clara had wanted as a kid. Life settled into a new rhythm. Helen called weekly, sending Eli books and small toys. George taught him chess over video calls, his gruff voice softening with every move. Sarah felt Clara in these moments, her love echoing through her family's efforts to heal. One evening, as Sarah tucked Eli in, he pointed to the framed dress. "Mama Clara's with us, right?" he asked. Sarah nodded, kissing his forehead. "Always, buddy." She thought of the video, Clara's voice urging her to live, to love. She'd done that with Mia, with Eli, even with Helen. Mia joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. "You okay?" she asked. Sarah smiled, leaning into her. "More than okay." The dress had started it all, a spark that led to letters, a video, a trust, a journey of rediscovery. Clara's family, once a source of pain, was now part of their story, woven into the fabric of their lives. Months later, Emily sent a final package, a photo album Clara had started for Eli, filled with notes about their family, their love, their dreams. It was the last piece, or so it seemed. Sarah flipped through it, finding a note tucked in the back. "Sarah, Eli, you're my everything.
Keep going."
Sarah showed it to Mia, who smiled, her eyes misty. "She's still guiding us," Mia said. Sarah nodded, feeling Clara's love in every step they'd taken. The dress, the gifts, the healing, it was all Clara, pushing them toward a future she'd always believed in. As they sat together, Eli asleep upstairs, Sarah felt a quiet certainty. The journey sparked by that small blue dress had rebuilt their family, not just with Clara's memory, but with new love, new bonds. The pain of loss would always linger, but so would Clara's light, shining through Eli's laughter, Mia's warmth, and the fragile, beautiful connections they'd forged. And somewhere, Sarah knew, Clara was smiling.